Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Marchman, and I am the host of the FireKeepers Global Conference, in which we'll gather for powerful conversations with cutting edge experts and thought leaders who will guide you to connect to your truest self and activate your natural gifts. This event is designed to reinstate the importance of carrying our soul directed vision back into our communities so that ourselves and our communities will flourish. Here you're invited to learn how to seek the guidance of your inner voice so you can truly understand what it means to live life with purpose. Very excited today to be talking with Kinde Nebeker. Kinde has a very wide range bio, but to sum it up, Kinde holds a master's degree in graphic design and in transpersonal psychology, but concentration in eco-psychology. After 30 years of work in the design profession, in the last decade, she is trained as a wilderness rites of passage guide, completing workshops and apprentices with the School of Lost Borders, Animas Valley Institute, and the Ropa's University Transpersonal Psychology Department, just to name a few awesome places. She is currently training to receive accreditations as an integral coach. Kinde is the creator and owner of New Moon's Rites of Passage and works with individuals and organizations in many areas of change and transformation, such as leadership, life transitions, grief, and general psycho-spiritual development and well-being. Kinde is committed to cultural renewal through the work of deepening and transforming our relationships to the natural world, to ourselves, and each other, as together we create the conditions for the shift in consciousness that we must all take in order to become a sustainable species on the planet. So Kinde, I'm really excited to talk to you today about mapping the territory, the landscape of collective transformation. So welcome. Awesome.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much. It's so interesting to hear you read all of that so I can kind of hear myself from the outside. Thank you very much for that. And, good, wonderful idea of what you are doing here. I just love this idea of fire keepers. You're really doing an awesome job.
Yeah, and I'm just excited that you're joining in on the call today. Is there a way that you want to welcome everybody in today to our circle, or did you want to start with questions?
Yeah, I just want to make a small correction that you were reading our old topic and the new one is
right. You just switched it.
Why planetary collapse is a good time to be human. Right. So, yeah, I just want to say it's so good to see you all. I see that there are a couple of people here that I know, and really warms my heart. Thank you so much for your support. I was watching your thing this morning, the very first interview of yourself with yourself. How beautiful, and your lighting of a candle. So I've lit a candle here. And I think what I would like to do is just take 60 seconds. And there's another candle. There are more candles. To just take 60 seconds and everybody sit together in silence. First, with attention on your own self, your bodily sensations and what's happening in your mind and your heart. And then after, 20, 30 seconds, then turning your attention, keeping part of your attention still in yourself to extend out and feel everybody else that's here now on this call live and the people in the future who will be listening to this recording. Does that sound good?
That sounds lovely.
All right. Okay, let's do it. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And I would encourage you, if you can or you want to, show your video. I'd love to see faces if it works for you.
Sure. I have the option open that y'all can start your video. And so feel free to do that. And if you, once again, if you can't find your video, go up to a meeting where it says Zoom, meeting, edit, window, blah, blah, blah. It should be in the top left corner of your computer. And when you click meeting, you'll be able to, that might be a problem too if we do open our videos, because you might have people that don't have their sound on. Can need that it'll go to their video, such as like we're seeing the screen of Patty's right now. So let's actually close our videos if that's possible. That's the only thing that's kind of tricky with Zoom here. Because since you're the main speaker here.
Okay. All right, I will just imagine everyone's face.
Yeah, that's the only problem with Zoom. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it looks like when people do that, their feed might come up and it's hard to see who's talking if you're watching this. Yeah. And yeah, sometimes when you have our profiles open, some people leave a picture, which is kind of nice, but most screens will be black with the name.
All right.
Okay. There's some logistical stuff there. That's fun technology. Well, Kinde, should we dive in? Is there
Yes. Let's. Should we just dive in right now and talk about planetary collapse? Let's just go for it.
Well, we can hold off for a little bit. I had a first question, just for you to expound a little bit on your bio, and this. I wonder if you want to tell a little bit of the story on how you came into this work, a little bit of your story, and
that's good, very good. Yes. Well, I was very happily living my life as a designer, doing public art and doing well in that profession. And then my early 40s, I started feeling this like uncomfortableness, you know how that is. And I actually went through a divorce, and my whole life just kind of imploded, and I was looking for what really mattered. And I stumbled across a master's degree offering from Naropa University, master's in transpersonal psychology with a concentration in eco-psychology, and the little blurb that was up there about what that degree was about just sung to me the way graphic design had sung to me as a freshman in college when I heard what it was about. And so I went along that path, and my life has started to sort of integrate more and more of all the disparate, different, what used to be separate pieces of my life. As I have gone along this path, I can see that all those things that were separate now are starting to integrate into this one weaving thread, the center thread of which is really about transformational change and evolution, about how we as human beings are on the planet, how we perceive the world, how we move through the world. My design career was very much about how we literally see, how we take in information and make sense of it. And so those same questions that I was fascinated by as a designer just started getting bigger and bigger and more cosmic and more all-encompassing. And now I find myself, 57 and a half years after being born, in a very different world with lots of the challenges facing us. And I can say, whoa, I'm just exactly in the right place at the right time. And I'm very excited to be working in rites of passage, doing that work like you, Ben, and watching what is happening at the very edges of how we understand ourselves and our world. Well, that's what I would have to say.
And what a journey, and what a amazing group of places that brought you to their paths, to their doorsteps. To the listeners and to the viewers that don't know where these places are, such as School of Lost Borders, Animas Valley Institute in Naropa. If you are getting into eco-psychology and rites of passage work, those are like literally the summits and the tops of the pyramid. And so, and it's very amazing places with amazing people who have brought this work to the Western world in different ways.
Yes.
And we can talk, gosh, about all three of those for probably 2 hours if you wanted to.
That's right. Yeah. Standing on the shoulders of giants, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I just want to say thank you for sharing a little bit of your path and your life story. It's so wonderful always to hear that.
Thank you.
And that kind of goes into my my second question. You have a unique way of pulling wilderness rites of passage work into like the collective community, as well as within your past trainings in transpersonal psychology and even design. Your website's great. A lot of people don't think about the design piece. And so I just wanted to ask that second question, was like, how do you see those fitting into the bigger picture of the collective and how we're building communities?
See which specifically?
Yeah, how do you see yourself using like wilderness rites of passage work and transpersonal psychology and your other ways of building relationships to I'll rephrase that question, to sustain our communities in your work?
Yes. It's all really in service of community. As you know, Ben, one of the central reasons and the central results, I suppose you could say, of rites of passage, since human beings have been on the planet as tribes, hunter-gatherers, these animal organisms working together, kind of without fur or scales to take care of ourselves. We have used rites of passage as a way of going from one stage to another stage in our lives. And classically, the rites of passage of going from puberty to adulthood is the rites of passage that we know most in this culture. And in indigenous societies, often that was the young people going out, young men usually going out, going through a threshold time, some kind of challenge, difficulty. Nowadays we do fasting, and coming back with a knowing, with a vision, with some sort of new piece of information that is for the people. We do this rites of passage in order to sustain our people. And so the rites of passage work that I do is always infused with this idea of social activism in whatever way that may manifest itself for the individual. It is not necessarily going out and holding a sign and protesting. There are many, many different ways that we can change, influence, nudge culture. And each one of us has a piece, especially in these times when so much is changing and we're at sort of an unprecedented precipice.
Beautiful. And well summarized. That, as as mentioned earlier, that can go on a tangent as well.
Yes.
And there's so many definitions of rites of passage work, and some are actually not nature based, and some are. And so the way you're bringing it to your community is in a very unique way through the transpersonal experience. Some people might have a different experience with their rites of passage in their questing. And one thing that actually wasn't in your bio that I did want to touch base on before we move to like the bigger questions here is if you wanted to explain to the viewers and the listeners that are listening to this call later or that are on now, to how you even pull in indigenous wisdom such as a medicine walk.
Mm.
Some people might not know what that is or have a different definition. So I wanted to hear your unique answer to that.
Yes. Well, I want to say that I come from a tradition. So what I know is, yeah, it's unique, but it's also what I'm in terms of medicine walk and yeah. Can you? So
Maybe we can just start in what is a medicine walk
okay.
for you, and how
Yes.
do you?
Right.
I wouldn't say facilitate it because this is an indigenous ceremony, but how do
Right.
you conduct ceremony within your community?
Right. Right. So you were talking about the indigenous wisdom, right? So the training that I have is from the School of Lost Borders, and one of the things that they say, and I felt at least one fellow School of Lost Border person here, is that it is pan-cultural, what they teach, and the way that wilderness guides that are trained by the school hold the ceremony is in a pan-cultural way, meaning that there is no appropriation from one particular culture, that it's a bare bones of the ceremony that is sort of the universal underlying part from many different cultures, from many different traditions all over the world. What is it that works at the very barest structure? And so a medicine walk is like a mini version, sort of a rites of passage. So it has the basic kind of form, which is a 3-part form that Joseph Campbell spoke about in his Hero with a Thousand Faces, was the idea of a separation, a threshold, and a return. So the hero, it's also known as the hero's journey. The heroine goes out and separates from what he or she knows, from community, from comfort, and goes through a testing time, as I had spoken about earlier. And for this pan-cultural form, it is going without, with just with minimal shelter. It's being without community, so it's by yourself, and without food, but with water, for 3 days. The medicine walk is a 1-day version of this, and then the return is after the threshold. The hero or heroine returns to tell their story, and the telling of the story is an important part. So a medicine walk is a day, and it can even be an hour of going out into the natural world, but being in the natural world in a particular way. So as you were talking about, Ben, in your interview at the beginning of this summit, there's an intention, right? You were talking about intention, how powerful that is. So on a medicine walk, we bring an intention, some question that we're holding, some information or guidance that we're seeking, and we go out into the world, the natural world, in a ceremonial, I've called it sacred theater frame of mind, and it activates what a friend of mine calls indigenous mind. It activates this other way of being that to me really reminds me of childhood. And then you just are out on the walk for however long it is, and you are being guided by your impulse about where to go, what you notice. So rather than being goal directed through the will and through the mind, it's a way of traveling through the time and space that is intuition based, heart based. You're drawing on other senses, and things happen, as you know, right? It's sort of weirdly miraculous, and I've taken people out on medicine walks who have really no idea what it is, and it's amazing how quickly we just drop down into that way of being that we were for 90%, primarily have been for 90% of our time here on Earth. That is just knows in a different way. And then a medicine walk is a return. Part of that is the return. And often if you have, I do medicine walks for myself, and I listen to my own story or make my own interpretation, but also you can have a guide or a community of people that you come back to and you tell the story. And your time out, it speaks in metaphor and poetry, and as you have articulated, Ben, it's the language of the soul. And it nourishes and satisfies in ways that I have not found other things to do, you know? Feels a part of my humanness that is often missing in this modern civilized culture.
Awesome. Beautiful. And just for the viewers and listeners, that was a very well done description of medicine walk, because it can be formulated in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And the piece in the medicine walk of what you were saying, the return of the soul, which I love. And sometimes it's like it's not a reawakening, but it's also something like as a guide, like coming, guide to guide, since you and I are both Vision Quest guides. It can also be, you can kind of treat it as like, it's not really homework, but it can be like, hey, you have somebody come into one of our, one of the ceremonies. It's a Vision Quest ceremony. I'm like, go on a medicine walk and find your intention before you show back up. And it's not like a duty. It's not something we just make people do. Like, if you were going back in time to the indigenous peoples of our continent, a medicine walk was always done with intention when something was coming up for somebody, and it was self-prescribed ritual. The piece of the word in that word, the word medicine, and what that really means, like, you're walking to communicate with soul and deeply with nature and spirits, or even omens, God, or whoever you pray to. And you're coming back with your medicine. And that medicine it can just be a piece. It doesn't mean like you're coming back with your purpose, like a full-on vision, like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen to humanity. It's just like you just get a little peek. But it's done through a wander, which is so fascinating. And that's that surrendering and wandering and like the movement. And like that's what's so special, because usually during a quest you're in one spot. And so it can be a really cool introduction into like somebody who might be interested in a rites of passage ceremony or a vision quest that's not sure. So you can, and like you said, sometimes this can be done in an hour if it's held correctly in that space, like you kind of mentioned. That council piece at the end, when people are sitting in a circle, telling about what happened. If you have the correct mirroring, which we can talk about if you want to, reflection back from the guides and the other people in the group, that can then, like you're saying, Joseph Campbell, that creates a myth within all of us. Which that to me is so cool. And like Joseph Campbell, if you're reading his books, he talks about the mythopoetic poetry of how to reflect, somebody's story back from what you're hearing, and not in a judgmental way. So it creates this storyline for the whole group, and everybody's back in this person's experience. So that's going to be really powerful and help someone build awareness behind their kind of what they're getting at or what they're working on. So that's just huge. If that piece wasn't there, then people would be like, I just went and wandered for the woods for the longest time, and now I don't have anybody to talk to about this weird experience. And so it's
Yeah.
just it's profound, but at the same time so transformational. So I'm glad we had to touch base on how you pull this into your work, because it's something that you might see with a lot of rites of passage type ceremonial organizations, nonprofits, businesses, or whatever they label themselves as, and sometimes it's like overlooked by somebody looking at it like really what it is. So I'm glad we got to touch base on that.
Yeah, and you articulated that very well, Ben. I like that you pointed out that it's done sometimes in preparation for a full-on major vision fast. It's information gathering, right? And that it's incremental and bits and pieces like breadcrumbs. It's a way of following breadcrumbs.
Yeah, exactly. And it has been used a lot in intros. And actually, if you look at all of there's another talk about this later this week that all the listeners and our viewers will see.
Mm.
That every religious figure has gone on some sort of vision quest, rites of
Yes.
passage journey.
Yes.
But it started with a walk. And that started with that intention. And so if you think about it, everybody's kind of starting with some sort of form of their own medicine walk to get there.
Yeah. Yes. And I always fantasize or imagine about, can you imagine a culture where CEOs, educators, politicians, businessmen, in making their decisions about what they're going to do next, they incorporate medicine walks, nature-based medicine walks, as a way of helping them getting information about what to do next. I mean, that would be amazing, huh?
It would change the world.
It would change the world.
I can think of some presidents that could need that. But I'm gonna change a little bit of the subject here.
All right.
I can see this kind of going into like
Yeah.
like why would I want to be going on a medicine walk or on one of these transpersonal journeys, and like that word intention. But kind of going a little bit back, we talked a little bit in your bio, just touch base on it, on like integral theory. And I wanted to know if you want to expound a little bit on what is integral theory and how is your work informed a lot from this training?
Okay, well, this is going to be a challenge. My friend Williams, who is on this call, would be the one to really answer that. But it's something that I came across during my graduate work at Naropa, and was part of the master's degree. And it's basically a framework, integral theory, a framework that developed by a man named Ken Wilber, who's currently in Boulder, Colorado, where he took, I remember in his book, A Brief History of Everything, where he outlines it, he talks about in his 30s how he was doing some kind of a paper for a class, and he started just putting these cards out on the floor, index cards, about indigenous wisdom traditions, about philosophy, Eastern and Western philosophy, and sort of every system that he could think of and that he came across around human wisdom, how we know things. And being the incredible genius that he is, he eventually came up with a multidimensional framework in which you can place anything or any thought or any discipline or anything in our human experience and kind of begin to see how it all fits together. It's very difficult to explain what integral theory is because it's pretty complex, but it has really helped me see things in terms of levels of development of consciousness, that we go through different levels of consciousness, and that not only individually but also collectively we're moving through different individual levels, and these levels have particular characteristics. They have particular world views. And that the trajectory of levels of development eventually kind of just go through towards what is popularly called enlightenment. But I'm sure that the Christian tradition has its own word for it. Western Judeo-tradition, becoming a saint, which is the total relaxation of the ego structures and this capacity to see a very, very big worldview. And one other important part of integral theory that really applies to the work that I do is the idea that the levels of development that we as humans have gone through thus far are at what is called first tier. They're sort of like the first foundational parts of a layered cake. And each of those levels of development that have their own worldview don't like the worldview of all the other levels of development, which is the basis for a lot of the culture wars that are happening right now around the world. People with traditional worldviews hate the people with scientific rational worldviews, who dislike the people with the green eco, everyone is equal groovy views, and they disdain each other. So this is tier one. But what is happening now that there is a level of consciousness coming online, Wilber identified these things. He didn't generate them. He's just noticing what is actually happening and seeing the patterns. So there's another level of development coming online, which is being labeled as second tier. And the distinguishing characteristic of that tier is that it has the capacity to see all other levels that it has already been through and see how each one is important and see how each one has contributed and is able to hold and accept all of them. So if you can imagine a critical number of, a critical percentage of the human population, 7 billion of us, some say that critical percentage is 10%, I think, right, William? Once you get about that percentage of people up or down, it's not hierarchical, it's not better or worse, right? Let's be very clear about that. But people at this coming into the second tier, the fighting and the warring just drops away. And it's really interesting to me that it's like a second coming. It's potentially a fundamentally different way of operating as human beings. And what it could and portends to usher in is an era of working together and creatively building a different world in a way that we have never in history seen before. And I think rites of passage and the transformational work that you are doing, and probably all of the people on this call are doing or interested in, is a really fundamental part of that.
Wow, and what a great description, and keeping it short, because well done. I was like, this is a heavy question, pulling us back into the science for a second. Yeah, thank you for expounding on that. I'm sure a couple people, when I mentioned that in the bio, just casually mentioned that, were wondering. So, and speaking about this time that we're in, that you have hinted to multiple times, and also your subject, which we can get to, is like what really gets Kinde Kinde excited about this transformational time that we're in?
Yes. Well, I feel like I first want to speak about the despair, just a little bit, yeah?
Sure.
it feels really important to name that and to acknowledge that, the grief and the despair. And I have to say, living in Salt Lake City, Utah, I don't, it's not, the weather's a bit warmer, but the skiing is great up in the mountains. It's been great the last few years. I don't know, we're getting more moist. I haven't checked like the weather, if there's really evidence in Salt Lake City of climate change. So I'm living a little bit from a place of what I hear on the news and what people are predicting. But if I open myself up to that and I really let it in, which is psychically really difficult to do, it's painful. If I really let it in, it's really impossible to hold, really. I have to have some kind of mental barrier to hold it at bay, because what it points to or intimates, it's sort of beyond conception. Yeah. What would you say, Ben? I just want to hear some other voices besides my own about this.
Yeah, we can open up a dialogue a little bit, since this summit's a little different. It's not really interview format. Yeah, in despair, like exactly like what you're saying, we're all feeling this on our planet, and it's spreading. But you did touch base on something that's so important, like how we're all part of this collective consciousness, and with it, we're, if somebody's feeling despair, that's going to spread. It's just kind of like, it's like a disease, and it's a virus, and that's why in our time, like this transformation that we've actually already been in. Everybody thinks like, our times are changing and this is the decade. Like, this has happened way before any of us are actually this generation and past generation, before you and I are both even born. And like, so like,
in some ways, things are always transforming, right?
Yeah, and we always think like, oh, this is the decade. But to get to this decade, if you think about like human history, like we've just been like a twinkle in the eye. So like we're slowly moving to this. So to me, I think despair has always been there, and is always going to be a challenge. And since this summit's really based in the soul-centric work, soul to me, and then hearing it from mentors and indigenous elders as well, I always like to think like soul doesn't see despair. Soul only sees hope. That's a good way to look at it, because it's, whenever you're communicating with soul, if you're communicating through despair, it's not going to listen to you. That's your ego. And that's the way I look at it. Somebody could probably be shaking their head and seeing that the wrong way. But just hearing from indigenous wisdom from many of the speakers that are on this summit, who are talking about the same thing, as well as what's out there going on, and from personal experiences, that's just where I can speak from.
That's
the way I see it.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's a really great articulation of it. And it really speaks to, if I bring it back to integral theory, the place where we can, our identity, how we perceive ourselves is, I am this spirit in a human body, which indigenous people have always come from that place. But I'm also overlaying all of the scientific knowledge that I have, all my capacity for technology. It's including all of that together. But where the seat of my identity is soul. I am something larger than this person, larger than this structure that's alive for, if I'm lucky, 80 something years. And then I disappear. No, I'm something larger than that. And this intuitive knowing that I have, and that is activated when I go on a medicine walk, when I feel that I am connected to everything else. Yes, this place knows something that can hold the despair. It can hold that part of me that feels like it's all unraveling. That part is bigger. Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. And since you've had training at Amos Valley, I was watching a talk when we were in a training a long time ago. I guess that was over a decade ago, with Bill Plotkin, and
Yeah.
he's kind of like a interesting guy, as you know him, because you've trained there. I always just remember he's like, you can dish anything. I'm probably going to butcher this. I'll make sure I got it right. Yeah, you can dish anything to the earth. It's like a sponge. It's going to absorb all of your despair, all of your darkness. But when you do that, when you dish that to soul, it's just going to reflect back your ego. And I just love that. Like trying to get rid of that ego and just throw that out onto the land because it's going to soak it in. But when you communicate with soul, it's just deeper listening. And so it doesn't really need any of your dialogue. It just needs you to be still and in that state of being.
That's great.
I love that terminology. And so if I don't see Bill on the call, but Bill, if you are watching this, and thank you for
There are people that know Bill that are on the call.
I just love that stuck home with me whenever we had that conversation. I love that.
Yeah, very good.
We're not at the top of the call yet, but I have one more question, and then we can summarize kind of our talk. And so I touched base on a lot of the questions I think I had for you.
Okay, and I do want to speak more explicitly to why, I don't feel like I've really.
Sure. And so if there's anything I'm leaving out, feel free to expound on. We still have some time.
All right. Oh, now?
Yeah. You could feel free to.
Okay, I thought you had one more question.
No,
All right.
sure. That was kind of the last question. It's like,
All
hey,
right.
so now we can summarize your.
Okay. I would like to say a few things, and then I really, really would love to have all of you that are here on the chat type in something as well about why now is a good time to be on the planet. So first, I think that one has to be able to be in this transpersonal identity place to even answer that question. Yeah. And some things might include, I get to be here to see the evolutionary edge of where human beings are going, to be here and to participate at a time where we're making the leap from who we have been for tens of thousands of years into who our potential as a species. If you're listening to this, you're probably in a more privileged position and have the opportunity, time, and space to think about, what is my purpose? What am I here to offer? And the capacity to be more fully human with everything that's available to us through technology, through information, and having the freedom and the opportunity to say, what is my unique soul's gift for being here? And how can it be part of changing culture and shifting where we're going?
I summarized your answer and put it in the chat.
Okay.
For everybody.
All right. There you do.
We could have gone on your answer, but yeah, like Kinde was saying, I'll rephrase the question for everybody and I'll write it again in the chat. But why is now a good time to be on this planet? Which is just such a powerful question. And think about what Kinde just said. What shifts are you going through, and where are you moving towards? And kind of think about kind of like how we're hearing from Kinde. Think about your journey and who's out there supporting you in this purpose, and then kind of re-ask that question to yourself and see what comes up. You can type that in the chat if you'd like. For some reason, it double times on myself there. But the question is, why is now a good time to be on this planet? And as you're kind of thinking about that, Kenny, if you're still welcome to expound on that. We still have about 10 minutes, and then we can close out with your free gift and your questions. So you still have a bit of time.
Okay. Yeah. So let me just feel for myself. I would say what I said before, but maybe more slowly.
And maybe it could be in the form of, just for our listeners or our viewers, I can reframe that question. Like maybe if there's any advice or if there's any deeper wisdom you want to share from your experience, or it can be guidance.
Yes.
If that's
like it's sort of like, why is now a unique time to be here? For in our human history, things would not change from generation to generation to generation to generation, right? You'd live in the same place. You'd marry your great grandfather's other line of the family, You'd take on your father's or your mother's way of life, and then things have just changed hugely. So, of course, with all of the amazing things, it's always a yin and yang. There's always the difficulty of trying to manage, how do I adapt to so much fast change? There's one thing, I'm in a group of a few people, integral practitioners, we call ourselves. And one thing that was brought up in that group was we get to be with each other in a completely different way. Here we are on this call right now. I recognize a few names and faces here. And the people that will be listening into the recording, right? There is a way for us to connect and actually feel into each other and sense each other in ways that we never ever could before, over distance and time. And what kind of creativity does that afford us? How are we building community in a way that has never been seen before? All these things, of course, humans, we're always doing that, right? But now with the pressure of climate change coming at us, we have to do it from a much bigger place. Like it's serious. It's putting pressure on us to get to that second tier of consciousness so that we can problem solve together and deal with perhaps our very existence as a species on this planet.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah,
we got something from Martha Potter. I don't know where you're coming in from, Martha. If you have a location. Martha from Idaho.
Coeur d'Alene,
Yeah. And she says, I'm here to pay attention, seek truth in all things, to help to raise awareness and facilitate unity. Wow. And having said that, she says, I invite you all to please become aware of and informed about the climate engineering operations that have been going on for decades. That's a great awareness. And she also goes on to say, no dialogue on climate change is complete, nor can it be accurate without acknowledging climate engineering operations. And so she listed a documentary that inspires her. So thank you, Martha, for putting that in there. Oh, and we got some more coming. Here we go. Ann Hayden, she says, we have y'all, it seems like Kinde and Ann know each other. That's exciting. Ann says, we have the privilege to take advantage of a huge amount of wisdom traditions and to filter them through my own soul essence. Well said. And then she goes on to say, then offer action and being through the unique lens of my soul and do this within community. Wow, we can all take that from Ann. And then
Ann is Rites of Passage guide as well.
Oh, hey, Eva. I know Eva. She's actually lives right down the road from me. If it's the same Eva Norton, I didn't see your location put in, Eva. But Eva says to see so many people becoming united in a collective way, worldwide movements starting to understand what the ancestors already knew.
Yes.
Well said.
Yes.
It's always cool to see your neighbors on there.
Yeah. There's a lot about the collective, isn't there? A sense of being, instead of just a tribal group of 30 people that moves around the land collecting and harvesting, and there's a sense of how I can be part of a community that is even larger. And to be deeply connected to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good space to be in. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour, and that's a deep subject to be in. I wish you and I had another hour to talk about just what we're talking about now. But we got one more. Valerie Gibbons, to heal ourselves, others, and the world through our passions. Short but sweet. I like that, Valerie. And so before we close out and you leaving us with something, and as well as for anybody that has questions for you, did want you to talk about a little bit about your free gift on what you're leaving everybody. And before we go into that, the free gifts are found next to each speaker's picture, and right next to their bio and underneath their topic, you'll see a free gift link.
Right. Mine is to be announced, but here's the announcement.
Which is fine. That'll be changed tonight, so you'll see it on Kinde's recording.
Yeah. So what I would like to offer is to help you set up a medicine walk and to mirror it afterwards. And I have done this long distance, and it works. So that would probably be a 30-minute phone call or Zoom call before to talk about your intention and to let me hear where you are going on a medicine walk, to answer any questions you have, and then for you to tell me when and where you're going so that I can be with you in my awareness. And then after the medicine walk, 30 minutes for me to mirror your story.
Wow.
It's a lot, huh?
That's amazing. And what a like a real and visceral offering. That's it's really beautiful. And I might take advantage of that after our call. I mean, it's just like that amazing. So I hope that
right.
you have people.
If it may have to stretch out for months. We'll see how many people respond.
Yeah. But, and just let everybody know, these medicine walks can even be like you're saying, short and sometimes even weekly basis. I've even met somebody who does a medicine walk every day. And you can do some. I've had some clients, or even myself, sometimes change the name to a medicine sit. So it's just a little mini movement. So you can kind of, as long as you're carrying that sacred space, but not also regarding this indigenous wisdom that you are actually performing. That's the important piece. And so like the ceremonial ritual work can be very effective, but remember, and something we didn't really touch base on, I don't want to take away your ending here, is this indigenous wisdom that we're talking about, a lot of people always think that's for you. And I always like to kind of guide people into understanding that, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, Kinde, that your medicine is not for you. It's for your community.
Right.
And that's something to really think about before you really conduct ceremony. Because like, what's your intention and what are you doing? Or why?
Right.
And how is this not really how is this helping you, but how is this helping others? And how is this you?
Well, it's a both and, right? It helps me, and through it helping me, I am of service. It is ultimately me in service.
And I'm so glad you're offering the medicine walk. That is probably one of the most unique gifts out of all the speakers. So it's really, really great. And so we still have about 5 minutes, and I wanted to open up the Q&A. We have one more course from William before we do the Q&A, which is This is a time that calls for our unique gifts to respond to the sheer scope and breadth, of the crisis humanity is facing. This is a can't even pronounce myself. Developmental process that grows us in ways we could not imagine or anticipate, touching our hearts, minds, bodies, and soul, all in the service of love. Wow, hard. Bringing it home for Kinde today.
Beautiful.
I'm gonna open up. You can post your question in the chat, which is usually easier because usually when I open up video, it can get a little chaotic. If you know how to raise your hand, sometimes you can do it that way, and I can bring your video to the front of the people. Usually the chat's the best way to do this. So I just invite you to, if you have any questions about something we touched base on that we didn't talk about, or is any questions for Kinde and her subject, feel free to throw those in there on the time that we have here. And as people are kind of thinking about what they want to talk about, I just want to say, Kinde and people posting in the chat so far, thank you for adding to this conversation and allowing us to go in this dialogue that's really needed for not just us two, but for you all. So thank you. Not seeing anything come through yet. And then you want to add in anything else that we feel like we didn't touch base on?
That would be another 4 hours.
Yeah, I feel like it would.
Yeah. I feel like we just barely got into, why it's a good time. I feel like it's really important that if we have the capacity to be in the kind of resonance and coherence that is, yes, it is a good time to be on the planet. And yes, I am putting my weight on that future where we all really learn how to talk to each other and hear each other and be with each other across all spectrums of society and culture around the world. I want to be that change. Then there's soul by soul by soul. We're creating the structures of the new butterfly. As we know so well about the rites of passage work, there's always a death and a destruction. And then that is a new birth, the same thing, the yin and yang again. So, I meet a lot of people that are in despair and that are bummed out and that are, or numbed out, bummed out or numbed out. But as many people who can really stand in the place of, yes, this is difficult, and yes, it is hard, and it's very hard for some people, and we're going somewhere. There is a purpose, there is a meaning, and I'm coming forward to be in community, to stand for this new world that is being born.
Wow. That, I don't think I can top that, or not trying to top that, but I don't think I can expound on that for you. I think that was really well said and a good way to close us out, unless you want to end us with anything that's really short. I think that's
just thank you all. I just wish that we could all be videoing, and I would love to just actually hear your voices, and maybe in the future the technology bandwidth will make that totally not a problem.
Yeah. And I'll put your I can put your website page. We got another post in here before we end out here. Martha
Yes.
Potter, I think this is a good way to begin by connecting with each other in ways that matter. I would love to hear more of what Kinde would like to share at another time, a longer time. Yes, exactly,
thank
Martha.
you, Martha.
Seems like time is always precious. And then Patty Meeks, this is an opportunity for deep listening, especially with those who are not of the same worldview.
Mm-hmm.
This deep listening must happen within me first and move outward.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patty.
Patty, that makes my body go brrr. I get chills. Yes. Yes.
I love Valerie's posts that she's always been posting. Great one-liners, Valerie. We made it through the 60s. We'll make it through this. Just another love revolution.
Yes, the pendulum swings, but the clock is moving forward.
And notice we kind of moved despair into the love revolution and the hope.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way to close us out.
Yes. Great.
But I just want to thank you so much, Kinde, for
Yeah, thank
coming
you,
on today.
Ben. Thank you. You're awesome, you know? Truly awesome.
Thank you. And touching all of our hearts and helping us really just look more inward and to really just build community and to look at despair and all these darkness times that we're in, but in a different way.
Yes.
We all desperately need.
Yes.
So just thank you very much. And I'll be probably seeing you soon since you and I talk a lot lately.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but have a great day and take care.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.